Hi, I'm Sarah Thompson, Sarah the homeopath, and this is my erstwhile occasional podcast, What's So Great About You? And my guest today is Leela Ehrhart. And I asked Leela, how do you want me to introduce you? What's your bio? And her first response was, I don't know who I am. And I thought that is a fantastic way to lead off a conversation about what we're going to be talking about today, which is what it means to be in the process of evolution when you come to the place where you are done being a victim of being in pain.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Good morning, Leela. Welcome.
Hi, Sarah. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I would like to lead off from that place. Tell me, what about what I just said? Where would you go from there? What is it like to be in your evolve in your life when you decide that you no longer are going to be a victim of your pain?
It's it's like a massive void opens up before you. In many ways, it is like, but not a void in a scary sense or even an empty sense, even though I know I use that word. It's like now there is this infinite space where something brand new can come in and be built that has nothing to do with the victim story that, at least in my experience, occupied basically the entirety of what is now a void. Like being really in that story and all of the ways that I was in that story, for the first, I don't know, 30, maybe more than that, years of my life, it was really hard for there to be space for anything else.
Yeah. And I could have rattled off your resume. I could have talked about your training and practice as a therapist. I could have talked about your work as a jeweler. I could have talked about your beekeeping, and I could talk about your coaching practice. That word never feels like enough.
Yeah.
Um, but I decided not to start with any of those things because I wanted to start with you as the person. And so when you talk about stepping into that void, what do you discover? You see this space open up before you, and then as you said, that sounds like an empty space. What did you find out there?
It's actually the most fertile ground there is, where anything that I want to nurture and grow can be nurtured and grown. And so maybe maybe a better word than void, or a better way to think about it, is that it's this like almost primordial nourishing goo. Doesn't sound like an appealing place to be, but it's like this is the most fertile ground that there is, and anything you want you can create there.
It reminds me of something that I heard Michael David Beckwith say about taking a step off the. I think you take a step in off the into the abyss and discover that it's a feather bed, something like that. But before you do that, it's an abyss. So I would like to learn more about what prompted you to get to be at that point and to make that decision, and where was the resistance? So what was the impetus and what was the resistance?
I don't think it was, at first it was not like a conscious decision that I made. It was more like my life was showing me, and my body was showing me, that the ways in which I had been living and moving through the world were not working. And so there was this sense that if I wanted a life that felt meaningful, if I wanted a life at all, if I wanted to not die, that's how it felt. I had to be willing to do some massively different things.
I want to stop and explore that because I have a feeling that people that are listening and the people that are come to you and want support and want navigation through this process are really familiar with that side of the cliff, like that edge.
Yeah.
What's happening up there? Like, what was your life? What had you created for yourself that suddenly became apparently not yours and not intentional and not supportive?
Yeah. Everything I had done, every major life move I made, I realized I had made from a very reactive place of just trying to not die. And I'll circle back to this because I said that stepping into the void was also trying to not die, but the energy there was very different, so I want to circle back to that. But
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
all of the school choices that I made, the relationship choices that I made, to some degree the career choices that I made, even though there were things that I loved about those careers, were it was very much like I'm drowning and I have to do something, and like I'm grabbing for a life raft and this is the closest thing. Like this is the only thing I can see.
Can you give me some specifics on that? Like, what were some of the things that actually, how did that day to day from as early as you remember? What are some specifics of what that looked like?
Certainly it looked like, well, okay, in various kinds of relationships, starting with friendships as a kid. And this is not to say that my friends were only my friends because I was desperate, all right? Like there was meaningful connection, but there were ways in which, like, if I found a person, that was kind of my person. And it felt too scary to like explore other friendships as also being my people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, choosing most of, okay, I don't know that I would have really wanted to go to college if I could have seen another way forward for myself. That's another thing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of school and I never enjoyed school. I was good at school. I thought I had to go to school or else there would not be any options for me, which is total brainwashing, but that was where I was. Most of the jobs that I've had, again, they were not all bad. There were things that I've loved about them, but it was sort of like, well, this is an obvious opportunity that's right in front of you. So you take it, as opposed to what do I really, have I sat with what I really want? Have I even asked myself that question? What do you really want at this moment in your life? And what could that look like? What do you want that to look like? Even if you have no idea, have you acknowledged that to yourself?
Did
And
yeah.
is this thing it or not? I don't know if that answers your.
Yeah, it really does. And I think, and I know that so many people identify with this. I'm good at it, so I have to do it, or I'm bad at it, but I have to do it. And never in there is the question of, is there any why in this that makes any sense? What's my like actual motivation here? Who's it coming from? Did Was there a point at which you felt like you hit a breaking point? Well, before that, actually. So as this is progressing and you're on this path that does turns out to not be a true path for you, what's coming up that's telling you that? And what are you doing to not hear that message? How is that happening before your transition to
Yeah.
a better vision?
Yeah. I was deeply unhappy for all of my younger life. Deeply unhappy with, things that got labeled as depression and, various kinds of depression and various kinds of anxiety. I'm not bought into any of that labeling anymore. Doesn't matter what the specific labels were. But I was miserable in my life. And it felt like no matter what I did, I would default back to this place of feeling like I'm just so exhausted and I don't see the point and I don't know how I'm going to keep going on. And I'm so tired of ending up back here and I don't know what to do about that. It feels like there's nothing I can do about that. And how did I avoid? Well, I mean, I took SSRI drugs for a long time. That was one thing. I made dysfunctional romantic partnerships the biggest focus of my life. That's a great way to distract yourself from what's actually true.
But then you get a drama that is like you can pretend you didn't create it and it
You
can
can,
live in
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, you can pretend you didn't create it, or even if you're aware on some level that you're creating it, which I think I was, that's a great explanation for all of the things that don't feel good. That I don't have to look deeper because this is an obvious reason why.
Yeah. One of the things that, we work together, and so we've had a lot of conversations. And one of the things that brought, our connection together is partly around the fact that I work as a homeopath. So I'm looking at health stuff and I'm looking at the way that we're throwing off all kinds of signals in the form of symptoms that point to where things are, in the true sense of the word, diseased. And I am, one of the things that you told me was that you were on a career path and you started to get some information. I wonder if there is a level to which you'd like to talk about what kind of information was starting to show up in your body.
Yeah. I mean, there were multiple career paths and multiple times. Although I think perhaps, well, this is with 10 years of work and hindsight. I think perhaps when things began showing up in my body the first time when I was still in jewelry, it was maybe more about the particular situation I was in as opposed to the career itself. I was also at that point beginning to try to get off of the SSRI. There was a part of me then that knew there's more for you. You're not going to find out what it is or who you are if you stay on this drug. So there were different sort of things happening all at once. But I began to have all this pain in my body. I began to have allergic kind of skin reactions, itching, hives, pressure, hives with pressure, like you loop a shopping bag over your arm and it welts up like where it was, that sort of thing.
You're under pressure, your
Difficulty
body's
sleeping.
rejecting that.
You're under pressure and your body's literally rejecting it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of digestive stuff began happening. And that was the first time.
Yeah.
I I suspect there were probably more subtle physical things long before then that they didn't get my attention and my memory of exactly what they were, I'm not sure. But I don't
Were
think
you,
it's the first time.
and were you still on the SSRIs at that time?
I was trying to taper, but I was tapering, but I was still on a hefty dose at that point. And
Okay.
then
And
something
then, yeah,
similar happened again when I was still tapering. This was at the end of my taper. That taper, that whole taper and withdrawal process really, it forced me to stop ignoring certain things. Like my body told me the truth about my life through that process in a way that I could no longer ignore. And so the second time was when I was trying to be a therapist. I had gotten a master's degree in counseling that I really probably shouldn't have, that wasn't true to me, but maybe it was something I had to go through, to get here. Sure it was. And a lot of the a lot of that physical stuff that I had described had largely seemed to resolve. I mean, not entirely, but it was a lot better than it had been, most of it, and it all started to flare back up again. combined with this sense in me of like, I can't do this. I'm going to die here. I'm going to die here. I remember, and I had the job, like I got the therapy job out of school that I thought was going to be the perfect, like I got exactly what I thought I wanted. And I remember like sitting in my office between clients with this, just this, like this stone in my gut and this thought, like, you will die here.
Mhm. In a way, it's there's a gift in that kind of reaction because you can't play around with it. You hear it, you know it. You can try to bury it again, but you've heard that level of message. It's not just maybe I'm uncomfortable. It's the message is I'm going to die here.
Yeah.
And so there's this weird space where you have this sense of security, which you thought was the goal, but it feels like it's killing you. So if you tip both those scales over, now you're not going to die of that, but also this sense of security is gone. What, when you got to that point, where, what else, what came up when you said to yourself, okay, I'm going to die here? I can't do this. I'm going to die. What did you see in front of you? What did you see as your options? And what made you choose the way you chose?
Well, I didn't immediately act on that revelation. It
Mm-hmm.
took me a couple more months, few, 2, 3 more months, maybe. I really wasn't sure what I would do. There was at that time a possibility of going back to a jewelry job that would have been a better fit, probably, and that at that time seemed to have the potential to grow into more than it had been, which was previously not enough to support me financially. So my plan was to go back to that, and by doing that, help the person that I was working for grow what she was doing. But then COVID.
Mm-hmm.
This was like this was like March, end of March, early April 2020 that this was happening. And part of that plan was doing in-person markets and shows and things like that, and none of that then happened. So I walked away from this path, and then the world shut down.
Right.
The world
Yeah.
shut down like a week later.
So there's this exogenous event, which I think this is an important thing to talk about for a minute because it's easy to try to make distinctions between I'm in a bad place because of something that's my fault. I'm in a bad place because of something that's someone else's fault. I'm in a bad place and it's God's fault. There's this desire to make sure we know who's at fault
Yeah.
before we decide whether or not to take responsibility for,
Yeah.
but this is what's in front of me.
Yeah.
And so
And
there you are.
yeah, and that's such a, I mean, this is such a thing that is ingrained in most of us, is like, whose fault is this? That's like the first instinct. Whose fault is this before I decide if I'm going to take responsibility for where I
Right.
am? And I can still default back to that place. Like I'm pretty aware, but really it's like, okay, it doesn't actually matter whose fault it is. This is where I am, and it's my responsibility to move myself forward. If I It's my responsibility to get myself out of here if here is a place that I don't want to be. And it doesn't really matter why I'm here in the way that maybe I think, because it
Yeah.
still is my responsibility to decide what I'm going to do and do it.
And so if somebody's approaching you in your practice now, which you have a coaching practice now. People can come to you and they can work with you, and they can come and they can say, Leila, my life's a mess. It's somebody else's fault, and I don't know how to get out of my own way, but I'm very clear that this is killing me. So, a place that I think probably based on the story you've told to some degree, most of us can identify with in
Yeah.
some way being in that story. They show up and they're in that place. And the offer and the possibility is what? From that place, where is it possible to go?
It's possible, I believe, to go anywhere you want. And the only limits on what that could look like are around the level of responsibility that you're willing to take for yourself.
When that's really, really hard, when the difficulty of doing that feels as much like dying as staying in it, how do you get yourself through those moments?
Yeah, that's a great question. When it really, really, really feels like dying, I just give myself a day to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't try to force away the truth of the moment. And so that can often actually be step one
Mm.
is I'm able to recognize, okay, this total sense of overwhelm about having to be responsible here is not true in the larger sense. It feels true right now. I'm going to let myself go there and I'm going to put a limit on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to
My
give
own, yeah.
myself today or or
Mhm.
whatever the limit is. And then I let myself be there. And it's always a relief. It always, something always opens up. And then when I get to my limit, where I've said, okay, I'm not going to stay here anymore, it's not like I feel like everything's great. I mean, it still feels really hard, but there's more space in me to be like, okay, what's the next step I can take here?
When I remember reading the book, I think it was called Stroke of Insight. I can't remember the name of the author, but this woman, she's a neuroscientist, and she had a stroke, and she realized that she was having a stroke in real time. She was observing what was happening in her brain. This fascinating book. And then she documents and her recovery and her process. And one of the things that she talks about is going from being this extremely high functioning person to someone who literally couldn't speak, like, in the moment of the stroke, had no capacity at all, no capability at all, and then trying to recover these things. And the she talks about how the brain, recovering from a brain injury like that, you actually are supposed to sleep a lot. Like, babies sleep all the time because their brains are growing, and that there's just tons and tons of sleep, and it's needed. And there has at times been this idea that you have to keep exercising the brain and working it and keeping it awake and getting it, back on the treadmill. And she discovered that this wasn't true.
Mm,
The brain needs space to recover. And most of us have a story, either internal or external or both, that we always have to be doing in a very outward looking way,
yeah.
or we're not healing and we're not growing.
Yeah.
And so people get into this space and they're like, I'm miserable. I'm so unhappy right now. Coaching isn't working for me because I'm not better yesterday. And when people are in that space, how are you with them when they're in that space? Where is that dance that you're able to hold them in between where the rest is and where okay, now you're in a downward spiral?
Yeah. And it really is a dance.
Mhm.
And it's absolutely still like, I certainly haven't figured out exactly what the steps have to be every single time. It's something that I'm co-creating with the other person as we move through the process together,
Mhm.
um, which I think is a really beautiful thing. Working working with the stories that are showing up. There is this story about rest, like you're saying. Can we name the story and that it's a story? And can we recognize when we're in it? That's kind of step one. And then what other stories are there? What other perspectives can come in here? What other perspectives can I offer here that help to expand on what's possible? What other reasons could there be? What other story is there about why you're not better yesterday? And can we slowly move into a place where we're actually practicing how it feels to discern between this is a time to rest and this is a time to outwardly do? And of course, the only way we can figure that out is by taking little steps in
Right.
both directions
Do
and
the experiment.
seeing what we learn from it and then course correcting, if necessary, like that, do the experiment. Yeah.
Yeah. I was listening to an inquiry meditation this morning, and Byron Katie was talking about, I'll generalize it a little bit. Look for the evidence basis. Look around for the evidence that you're not dead yet. That's the evidence that things are working.
Yeah.
So what's here right now? And every moment that you go past or future, what we're trying to do is expand this. The healing process expands that space. And when we're, but when we're in it, it also shrinks it. It's like, that's part of the experiment. And so being able to look around and say, all right, actually at this moment, as much pain as I'm in so much pain, Dolly Parton has that line about a broken heart won't kill you, but you wish it would. That kind of pain, that's the proof that you're not dead yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And then this next breath, you're still not dead. And then this next breath, you're still not dead. And suddenly it starts to become, well, I can brush my teeth now. That's something I can do. I
Yeah.
can have a glass of water now. That's
Yeah.
something I can do. I can walk to the mailbox.
Yeah.
And each one of those things then builds on the next thing. And it's like, well, yesterday you said you were going to walk to the mailbox and you did. So yesterday was a success. What's
Yep.
next?
Yep.
I mean, I think this is just such a fantastic and beautiful thing to be talking about, because we really get so stuck in, I'm so angry that this happened to me that I'm going to fixate on that anger to the exclusion of the gift of possibility. And so kind of to bring this to a close, to come around to where we started, at the same time as it's an open question, who am I? How would you talk about who you are right now? What would you like this snapshot, which doesn't even have to be true tomorrow, to be, as a Polaroid to hold up to say, hey, we're all in the healing process right now. And this is, you can hold up, you can make your bulletin board of Polaroids of each phase of it.
In this moment, that might not be true in the next moment or tomorrow.
Yeah.
I am someone who is deeply committed to the fertile ground of the void.
That's fantastic. I love that. I love that. In a in another conversation sometime, I would just love to, I think, and actually this might be a really nice thing to leave people with, is I'm guessing that if you're listening to this, you know that void, you've seen it, you've looked at it, you've backed away from it. Maybe you've looked at it, stepped into it and said, no, but I haven't, nothing's caught me. I'm still falling. What a wonderful thing to sit with would be, what's actually in this void? Like, look around and describe that void. Make, what's the texture of it? What's the color of it? What's all the experiences of that void? I think could be just a beautiful way to sit with the process of discomfort. And I wonder, just to close us out, talk a little bit about what's been in that void and what what has surprised you. What is something that is surprising on the upside? What's been in the void and what is surprising on the upside?
The fact that it's fertile ground at all was at first surprising.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's a much softer, it has a much softer texture than I ever would have thought. That quote about hurling yourself into the abyss and discovering it's a feather bed, it's that's been pretty true. Not that it hasn't also been overwhelming, and but it's much softer than I would have imagined. And I sense that there is far more there than I can possibly imagine. Like, I, in some ways, I hope I'm never not there. I hope that my understanding of it continues to evolve and grow. But in some ways, I hope I'm never not there, because it is the place that we can create everything from.
That's fantastic. I love that. It's funny. We think about the abyss as this real dark, scary place, but it's the everything place.
Yeah.
So everything that we don't know is going to be in that space. And if we don't feel like our lives are what we want them to be, then there's a lot of what we don't know that we do want. And we don't
Yes,
even know we want it.
exactly.
Thank you, Leela. It's been a fantastic conversation. How can people find you if they want to follow up on this potential to transform out of this dark space of coming out of, I have not lived my life the way I want, and I've lived it on other people's terms. I've tried to medicate that away. That did not work. That made it worse. I'm ready for change. I don't know how to get there. How do those people find you?
Yeah, the best way is to find me at my website, which is leelaehrhart.com.
Can you spell that for everybody?
Yes, LeelaEhrhart.com.
Okay, leelaehrhart.com. You can find Leela there and book an initial conversation with her and really find out what the potential is for how that void and that abyss might be a feather bed for you. Thank you, Leela.
Thank you, Sarah.